time to let people know your story, John, to get to know a little bit more about you and why in the world you would hang out at a racetrack, why would you spend endless hours working for a donut and a energy drink every now and then, and you just volunteer so much time like so many people that keep these short tracks going all over the country. So let's get folks to know a little bit about you. First of all, why don't you let everybody know where you grew up at? Where were you born, and where'd you spend that first 5 years of your life at?
I was born in El Paso, Texas. My dad was in the military. And once he got out of the military, soon after I was born, we were in the San Jose area. By the time I was 4, my parents separated. I went and stayed with my aunt and uncle. Grew up around, his older brother that builds race car motors. And, my dad started racing when I was 5, taking me to the racetrack. I learned how to do, anything and everything on a go-kart by the time I was 10. Started hanging out with my uncle at his shop, helping him build motors, handing him parts, cleaning parts, and that's pretty much how I got introduced to racing. Really got introduced big time to it in, the early 80s. My uncle was building Jim Pettit II's motors at Watsonville. So we was going to Watsonville every weekend.
So 1980, you say? Somewhere there are 80s. Give me about a year there.
80, 81, somewhere's in there.
80, 81. Okay. I ran 1980.
I want to say...
Go ahead.
I want to say that Jim Pettit started in 81, I believe.
Hobby stocks? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I
so.
ran Hobby Stocks 84, Merced, Watsonville, and then in 85 I switched to late models, and I believe that was I could be wrong, but I think Pettit switched also in 85. There was Jeff.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, a bunch of them, 85. There was so much. It was amazing. Wasn't there? Ray Morgan, McCowan, Ed Sands, all those guys. That was an amazing time. Bobby Hogue, all those guys. It was hammered down. It was like the Southwest Tour, but on dirt, really, that whole tour.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was, I want to say, yeah, it was definitely 85 because that's when Jimmy switched from the rounded Camaro to the more aerodynamic square looking one.
Yeah, you had that blue and yellow number 6. There was actually a really big race I won in my Coca-Cola car there in 1985. Maybe it was 86. I think it was 86. You probably cheered against me because it was at the very end. It was Pettit and I hammered down on the front row going for it. It was a big 100-lapper, and I won. And I remember winning that thing. King Clapp came down, wanted to make sure I was even 16 years old. Even though I was like 20 or something, 21. I looked like I was about 12 years old. So you probably cheered against me if you're a Pettit fan back then. Pettit and I, we weren't the greatest of friends, but on the track. But years later, we've become super close, and he's someone that it was a lot of fun. Really appreciated seeing him go in the Hall of Fame last year. So, all right, so back to you. So that's Watsonville, mid-'80s. Where'd you live at that time? Where you mentioned like engine building and all that. Was that still going on at that time?
Yeah. My uncle built his motors probably till like the mid-'90s or so. Once he jumped up into like the Southwest Tour and stuff, my uncle wasn't messing with those dry sump motors. But I grew up in the Monterey area. That's where I went to elementary and, all the way through high school. Went to Monterey High. Grew up out on the coast my whole life and just racing at Watsonville, going, go-kart racing all over, up and down the state of California with my dad doing, sprint races, which is like road racing, and then doing some dirt track stuff also. And he was dirt track champion in a go-kart in 77 and 78. So, I had to add a championship to the family.
There you go. Did you do much? Did you get to do much driving go-kart wise when you were younger? or mostly just crewing?
No, just crewing because my grandparents had custody of me, and pretty much if my dad put me behind the wheel of a go-kart, he was never going to see me again.
Huh. Okay.
So, yeah, they did a little tough love with him.
Okay. At what time? I know you spent some time in just listening to you and talking, and kind of seemed like your affection for the four-cylinder classes really developed up in Washington. It sounded like you crewed on a car up there. Tell me, when did you move to Washington? And then tell me a little bit about those four-cylinder cars that you crewed on, and is that how your energy towards mini stock racing developed?
Yes, I had a bad drug problem, and I took care of it by moving out of state up to the state of Washington. Been clean ever since, and figured, hey, get rid of, one speed, let's go to another, and ended up working at a go-kart place, indoor like MB2, but gas powered. Met up with this kid that kept coming in. We had a racing series that you do, once a week, and he won a couple of championships doing the indoor go-karts, and his mom was like, hey, what's next? And I turned him into, onto a racing school up at the Evergreen Speedway up in Monroe. And then she's like, okay, he wants to do it. What's next? So I jumped on the website for the racetrack and started searching for a car. And we ended up buying a 83 Volkswagen GTI that the person that we bought the car from said that if you race this thing in the rain, you will definitely total the car. And it just happened that the very first night that we went out to the racetrack, it gave us everything: sun, snow, rain, sleet, hail. It threw everything in the bucket at us all at one time. And our dummy butts forgot the singing windshield wiper in a crate at home. And so we had no windshield wiper, but we did have Rain-X. And he started at the back of the field, and we brought the car home in one piece. I mean, he spun it a couple of times. Somebody slid into him and bent their car, but ours went on the trailer with all four fenders and wheels on it.
So you've been crewing and wrenching on cars for pretty much your entire life, right? From the go-kart time
Yes.
to this point. Okay, what years?
Yes.
Give me kind of a year. Give me a timeline when this took place with that Volkswagen.
2006 to 2005 was about when I started with helping the kid out. And then I moved back to California. We did it for till 2007. I came back to California in 2008. I was still in contact with.
Oh, pardon me. I was going to say, let's finish what you're saying there, and then I got a question for you. I want to insert because I don't want to get ahead in the California side. But so you're still in contact with that young man from Washington when you moved back there?
I was still in contact with the young man in Washington, and still helping him out with setups and different things, via telephone. And he ended up selling the Volkswagen. We got a 1993 Honda Prelude that was a championship winning car. We bought a recycled motor from the Japan recyclers for like $500. Never thought the dang thing would run fast enough to keep up with some of those $6,000-$7,000 fire breathers, but he finished second one night, and it was like just amazing that we had such a setup in the car that it would roll through the corner a whole lot better than some of those high horsepower cars, as we have that problem with some of the big motor late models.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let me jump in because I want to kind of stay on a couple of thoughts I've got here. So you were saying that's in the 2000s. So there's quite a span there, 90s and whatnot. Tell me, you touched on, since you mentioned it, I'll go ahead and I think it's important, very much like Carlos Vieira's story in racing, very inspirational. So you had a drug problem. How many years was that as far as the drugs? So you're involved in drugs in the California scene. How long was that period of your life?
It was probably like 10 years, but I did from 89 to 98, I did BMX racing, and in 97, 98, I did win, the California State Championship on my 20-inch. But the drug problem, started, about 90, 6 or 7, was kind of just lost in where I wanted to go, and just lost myself a little bit. But 2003, it was like, hey, it's time to wake up. The drug scene is definitely nowhere that anybody wants to be, because it's definitely the devil.
Yeah, and Carlos, and very similar to your story, I've always felt like there's a connection between you and Carlos because of that. And where Carlos will say, racing pretty much saved his life. It just completely replaced, that drug scene, and it was the thing that just was the fit perfectly in his life. And it seems like racing is so important to you. Kind of in that same window too. So, okay, let's jump. So how did you end up from Washington to Madera, and kind of give me the time frame on that?
I came back to California. It was basically I was married back then, and the wife was out here in California. The ex-wife was out here in California, and basically, said, hey, we're coming back. So it was like, okay. So I came back, and it took me a few years, of just listening to the Madera Speedway. I moved, to Madera in 2008. I reached out, a couple of times to a few people and never had any luck. I went to the races one night and heard that there was a couple of people in the Toyota sedan class, which, was kind of crazy that I'm into the Datsun 510, which is basically like the same kind of car. So I was really familiar with, the Toyota sedan, suspension and different things. And I liked that class. It was really fun to sit there and watch like 25 of those things really rip around the track. So at the end, there was an announcement that there was a husband and wife that was racing in the class from Madera, and I ended up hitting Dell McIntosh and Candy McIntosh, hit them up and said, hey, I'm bored sitting at home. I'm into racing, and I'd like to come racing with you guys. And did you guys need some help? And Dell got back to me and said, hey, come out to the races Saturday. After the races, come out to the pits and check us out. And I did that, and had been with them from the middle of 2012 all the way through 13. Started helping them build a late model, and got kind of recruited to the Madera Speedway.
I ruined your pit crew time. So now you've been just like so many people, as we all know. I mean, everyone in the short track world, it's all heart, soul, passion, just total, like your story, just a complete lifelong love for the most part of racing. Somehow it gets into that blood and you just can't get it out of the veins. So people like you make the sport go around. I think that's what's so important, to have a variety of different people on the show. So let's I want to talk about something else, because you've been helping us for a long time. I know you really well. You are really, really good at improvising, overcoming. So let's talk about a lot of people in here probably won't know it. A lot of people know, real close, you're legally blind, right?
Yes.
So tell people about the disease you have, exactly what it is, and little by little, I mean, you really know how to overcome some challenges. So you won a championship last year in the Madeira Mini Stocks while you're legally blind. So tell people what you're dealing with there.
It's called retinitis pigmentosa. It's basically deteriorating retinas. So I have blind spots. I have no peripheral vision. I have no, I can't see, basically my hand's right here in front of me. I can't see that. Like I can see distance, really, really well. I can see, out the windshield. I could see all the cars in front of me. It's just nighttime is really, really tough. Because being that the retinas are deteriorating, they don't soak in the sunlight. So like everybody has, night vision. I absolutely do not. I do use a cane, for nighttime stuff. Mostly I use a flashlight, when I'm at the racetrack. So not many people know. And, it's almost like a photographic memory of, when I walk around places. It's just insane. It amazes me on how I don't walk into things, or I know where certain things are just by senses.
Well, and I would say, too, to that, I know your night vision, you really struggle, and it's amazing. You're one of the key guys when, at 2:33 in the morning, when everyone else is gone and there's 5 of us left on the property, you're always right there with us. And I know at nighttime you really, really struggle. In fact, I ran into several people that didn't know anything about your condition, and you'd run into them or bump into them at night, and they'd whisper, "Hey, is that guy, does he drink too much, or what's he do?" No. So I'd tell them a little bit about your story. So with, let's tie this all together. So you're a youngster, you're crewing on go-karts. You don't get to race at that point. You go up and crew on some cars in Washington after you fought off the demon of the drug addiction and fought that beast off, completely recovered from that. Now you're dealing with this situation where you're legally blind and it's deteriorating, and you finally get to race last year after piecemealing this car together. That, by the way, it was a car that we had from a stunt show, from a monster truck stunt show, and it just happened to survive. A little Ford Focus John had. And it was, what was it called, the Wall of Death or something? And we put these big Cadillacs up, and this car went down and hit them and knocked them all over, and it smashed a bunch of this little Focus in. And we're hauling all the cars off the property after this big show, and John says, "Hey, that one doesn't look too bad." And the car survived. John turned it into a race car and won a championship. So you come from being a kid, crewing on go-karts. You don't get to race at that point. You crew on other cars. You fight off drug addiction. Now you're fighting this blindness situation, and you finally win a championship. Is that why a lot of, we saw so much emotions coming from you every interview. It was hard to not have a box of my old sponsor's Kleenex right beside you, even doing an interview with you, but you were so emotional. Same with the banquet. Is that where all that emotion comes from? Just like this victory that I did this?
Yep. That is definitely, I've wanted to do this stuff since I was 5 years old, like a junior late model driver. I know if I was given the chance to drive even a hobby stock back in the day, I had a guy that definitely knew how to build motors, and I definitely had a guy on my side, with Jim Pettit, that could definitely teach me to the ropes around Watsonville. But I just never got the opportunity, nobody, and I never took the initiative to, like take one of Jim Pettit's old beat up cars back then and do anything with it. So I just had fun working on race cars.
And I can relate to I think that's something you and I have a lot in common. I was a kid racing and wanted go-karts. Family couldn't afford them. We lived back in the Midwest. Carol Hoover, that was on here earlier, we built go-karts out of these wooden things, and nailed with nails, we would put the lawnmower tires on them, and you'd put a bolt through the front with a rope, and run them down a hill. That was the extent of kind of our go-kart racing. And like you, my parents split up, and it was kind of a mess through the teenage years at times. And so I built my first hobby stock when I was 14. All I could think about from the time I was a 5-year-old was racing, but I had to sell that one. And then I built my second hobby stock, and I blew up the engine of my street cars. The only way I get back and forth to the gas station, work, and high school, so I had to sell that one. I actually didn't start racing until I was 19, John. And I always felt like I was so far behind others. And a lot of my passion for working with the kids is, fulfilling those dreams, keeping them on the right path. And so I think you and I have a lot in common between kind of fighting and scratching and clawing to go racing, keeping others on the same path and away from the kind of the demons of life. I know you've got a big heart and talked a lot about that. But so it was so fun to watch you last year win that championship. I could tell from being around you how much it meant. The other element to this too, and people that don't have the addiction of racing, that's probably I don't know, I shouldn't say this, but maybe some other addictions are easier at times, huh? Right, John?
Yeah.
Yeah, especially with the expense and going racing and all that. But I'm just joking with that. Don't blast me in the comments.
No.
So one thought that I have with the racing side of it and the passion and just the family of racing and how it gets in your blood and you love it so much, it just comes bursting out of people. And that probably comes out of you more than anyone. And the point that I was going to make was, and I saw this with your race car, the look of a race car, when you finally get to build that first car. My first car I raced was out of 2 crashed 69 Novas that I begged one for $50. The guy was going to throw away. The other one was in a wrecking yard. It was given to me. I cut the 2 cars in half, welded them together. In my grandmother's driveway, we had a swing set I borrowed from the neighbor that I built this tarp out of wood, and that was my shop. And I welded those 2 cars together, and I ironically, my first one was 93. I saw when you were putting the 97 on your car, and it wasn't even completely painted. You'd stand back and look at that car, and I could just see that. That's probably, that was your hobby. That was your thoughts when you're laying there in bed before you go to sleep at night. What's my car going to look like? And just the pride of actually finally having a stock car to go drive. What did it mean to you to build that first race car and get to race in it?
It meant everything. I mean, I saw it in the infield. You said, get the cars ready for, pick and pull to come and get them. And I saw that the key was still in that Focus, and it started right up, and let the story be started right there. I mean, it looked like a New York City train car all graffitied up. And I just
front end smashed up, wiped out, and guys that are on here watching, I gave John a hard time because we're getting them ready for the smasher. And what's that one still doing here? Get that one out of here, John. Come on, we got to get this place cleaned up. We got to race. And I kind of saw that look in your eyes. Hey, can I have that one? Sure. So John turned it into a race car. Save that one from the smasher.
And the funny story about that car is there was nothing repaired on that car from the smash up. The hood's still bent. The fenders are still bent. The grill got busted out. The bumper had cracks in it. Hey, it's a race car. It's going to get beat up anyway. So,
yep.
Being my first race car, I didn't want to put new parts, so, hey, let's see how it goes right now, so,
yeah, and it wasn't very fast when you first started, was it? It wasn't real quick, but it was amazing. You're overworking everybody in the pits for technology as much as anything. So it didn't matter if it was a Mike Nank or Dan Myrick or whoever. You're trying to get information. Next thing, you may have a white cane out the right-hand side, me on the radio. To be honest, too, guys, we'd do the TV show, would do the announcing, and anytime I get a chance to spot and coach him a little bit, it was a lot of fun. It was like driving. You were so responsive. It's like driving a remote control car, our little RC cars. But I had you in the wheel. It was really good. So that first heat race, remember that? How fun that was? On the that was cool.
That was one of the biggest accomplishments right there, because me knowing that Dan was so fast in his car, Dan Myrick being, he was so fast in his car, and I paid attention to the heat race that went before us, and the guy started in the same position I did and rolled the top and ended up winning it. And you jumped on the radio before I went on the track and said, "Hey, you see that race?" "Yes, I did, sir." You're like, "Hey, we're going to do the same thing. Roll the top and roll that sucker with momentum, and we're going to get that hot rod.
Yeah, it was funny.
And
you got it. I was surprised you did it, and you trusted me that much. So, and I between me and you now, I'll be honest, I was hoping that thing would stick as hard as you drove it in that first one. I told you it would, but that was kind of cool.
I was hoping so too, but
Yep.
I mean, with Dan and all the guys, you know, it's like they're so amazing. It's like, I mean, they all know that I have the vision problem. That they were all kind of, you know, like, what the heck? This dude is kicking our butts in a car that is totally stock, still had the full dash in it, CD player. I mean, air conditioner was still in it. I would run the air conditioner at sometimes when I needed a little bit of traction control coming off the corner.
Yep. Again, I wanted everyone to hear your story and why that year was so important to you. It was so much fun to watch you, and knowing when we get out of those race cars and how fired up we are, and to see you go through that experience after a lifetime of wanting to do it. Congratulations. It was a lot of fun last year. The John Williams story, everyone.
Johnny is actually vision impaired and doing a good job out there in this car.
We should be spotting for John right now. Why don't we hop on that and see if John's on this one? John Williams, if you're on channel 3, inside, you're looking. Let's roll the bottom a little bit better. Sweep that corner and roll the bottom. Keep that high horsepower car off you.
And Johnny Williams on the front row, and the 68's trying to jump underneath them here, and they're banging wheels into turn 1, Andy. We got it on camera.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it. Everybody, all the fans that have come out, really appreciate their support. Just like to thank my dad, my girlfriend, Kim, and Pacific Metal Fab, everybody that's helped me out. Put race wheels on it and put a roll cage in it, and it's a race car now.
Hey, great job tonight, Johnny Williams. We're down here.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage your 2021 Madeira Mini Stock Champion, John Williams.